All right, folks, I just wanted to give you a look at what I'm going to do here. Did some sodding out front, and I got a couple of strips of sod left. I am going to cut these into my own plugs. I know that's not ideal, but I had some left over and I'm going to use them, and I'm going to plug this area through here, just sort of in this general area, and get an idea of how good they come in. I know people said these things are difficult to cut. Some people use a knife, some people use something to cut from the underneath side. I think I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use my edger. I have an Echo edger, and I think I'm just going to use it because it's got a wheel that'll hold and then the blade that'll run through it. So I think I'm going to try to cut them in about 3-inch squares, and I'll get you some video of how that works here in a moment. And then I've got a little auger bit for my drill, and we'll see if we can drill some holes here and get them in the ground. Okay, so I had second thoughts on using the edger. I've heard people say this was very tough to cut, but to be honest with you, I'm using that, and there's not much to it, to be sensible here. I'm measuring over. What I did was I cut strips, took the first one there and cut it into strips 4 inches wide, and then I've laid the strips out here. I've already been cutting plugs out of it, but I laid the strips out here, and I'm going along about every 4 inches and cutting. As you can see, I've already got these started like that, and then just sort of turning this to the side, going straight, and using that to come along and cut that off, move those out of the way, move over, cut those off. And it's really not that hard to do. It's not taking much time, and I'm coming up with I've already put some in the ground over there, as you can see, and got quite a bit here. Now granted, this sod has just woken up. I've gotten this sort of early in the season, so there is a risk that it won't come in as good, but we'll see. I mean, you know, these strips are $9 a piece, which beats the heck out of ordering plugs. I realize they're not as deep or as thick as plugs you get online, but once again, this is sort of just a test. We're going to see how this area does. I'm going to have easily enough to fill in from probably here all the way up to there. I've already got a bunch of holes dug. I'll walk you guys through that process in a minute. The North Carolina red clay is pretty tough. I've got an auger bit over there on a drill that I've been using, but as you can see, there's a plugger back there in the background. Sort of doing a combination. That plugger cuts a nice hole, but it's not wide enough for what I'm doing. I'm making 4-inch wide plugs, so I want about a 3.5 or 3 3/4 or so hole, because I want to sort of squish these into there really good and then push them down. So I'm sort of plugging and then coming over and widening it up with that thing. And where the ground's softer, the auger bit does great, but you know, this is pretty hard through here, and always has been. So I'll show you the rest of that process here shortly, but for right now, I'm going to cut the rest of these, and then I'll show you where we're going. Okay, just to give you guys an idea here, you know, some of this sod, you know, just doesn't have a lot under it, so I may not use those pieces, but the majority of it, just so you can get an idea, you got about that much of a root system below it. So I feel pretty good about pieces like this. Some of these other pieces that aren't so great, you can tell that's lost a lot of its dirt just in transportation. I'm just setting those to the side. I'm still going to use them, but I'm going to plant them more, you know, back toward the edge of the yard where it's not as critical. You know, if they come in, they come in, but if not, everything will continue to grow that way anyway, but we'll see how they do. Okay, so round one is done. I'm gonna have to do this other strip tomorrow morning, but just to give you an idea, you can see the plugs here. Those are all plugs that I just made and just put in the ground. And then I got back here near the back, and honestly, my daughter wanted to do some, so we did some back here across this way for her. So she did them all the way over into here. You can see the little brown, the plugs that are sort of just coming to life. So I'm going to water these in, walk over them a bit to make sure they're down in there really good. And then tomorrow I'll pick up and sort of fill in this area right here. There's a gap right in here. And then the area over here where the strip is, I'm going to use that. Now, what I used, just to show you guys, I started off with a couple different things, and I finally landed on one. I'm going to cut my plugs just a little bit smaller, and I'm using one of these, which is just a plugger, which my dog unfortunately thinks is something to play with. So the whole time I'm trying to plug, he's attacking it, as you can tell. So it's been fun. But I wound up plugging that. I then tried a few times coming back along with this. However, you know, since making these plugs, they're not as deep as plugs you would buy off of the internet or anything, or from a grower. So really, I sort of like the idea of you know, having a plug, you know, the hole maybe about this big and then the plug being a little bigger. And then I would grab the plug from the corners, dome it up, force that down inside the hole, and then push the center down, which got really good contact. So these are definitely, you know, I'm squeezing them in these holes. And I don't know if that's going to be great. I don't know if it's going to suck. But they're in there fairly tight. We have a big storm coming in here Sunday night. Just my luck with the weather, right? Every time I time to do something out here, something like this happens. So that's coming in here, and I didn't want everything to wash away. So I wanted to get them in there good and snug and in there tight. So we'll see how they hold up, and then we'll water them really good. And I'll give you guys some progress on this area in the next couple weeks. But you know, just a test we can do together to see if you can make your own plugs out of a local distributor that does sod. If you can save yourself quite a bit of money. It is a little bit of labor, but not anything drastic. So we'll see how it goes here. All right. I mentioned in my previous video and you know, about starting this, and I've got several clips here. This is the end of the sort of the plugging phase here. Essentially, you can see this is my neighbor's house behind me, but he has a plugger, one of those, you know, just normal pluggers that he bought, because he's going to do the same thing. And I started with these size plugs, cutting things about 4 inches, cutting my own strips about 4 inches apart, and then using an auger bit, as you saw earlier. This North Carolina red clay, I've got some rocks and stuff in it, and so the auger bit was hit or miss. Certain areas it worked great, certain areas it didn't. So then I started using that plugger, and then coming behind it with the auger bit, and that would open it up, and that worked fairly well. What I started doing today when I finished up is I've got these large plugs. Today I took and used the remaining sod, and I cut these small plugs. These are basically 2-inch by 2-inch plugs. And the beauty of them is that they fit perfectly in the holes that step-on plugger makes. So that made things a lot easier here. I just went through and plugged a bunch of holes, posted all those in. I need to blow off all the extras, but there's rows here of 2-inch size plugs. These are then 4-inch plugs. And then this area already had some decent grass in it, so we skipped it. And then up here, there's another area of 2-inch plugs all along here that we put in. So the plugs don't look great because, like I said, I got this sod a little early, and it's a little bit, you know, brown in certain areas. There's a bunch of little extras that are left over. I got a few here and there. I may dig a couple little small plugs and pop those in there. But I will be watering and monitoring this, and we will see how it does, and we'll see how it comes in and how it progresses, and hopefully we can all learn something from it. Because if this works and you can buy strips of sod and make your own plugs, which I totally expect that you can, because even like the Zoysia plug people online, you know, they sell just sheets of plugs that are not plugged, basically. So it's just a big sheet of sod that you cut. But you know, for me, a 2x5 roll of sod is $9, unless you're buying it in a pallet, and then you know, the price comes down. But you know, I did all of this, everything you see back here, out of 2 pieces of that, and still had some left over that I put around the side. So that was 18 bucks. And I probably have, I don't know, 180 or so plugs out here. I mean, there's a ton of them. So, I mean, even if half of them come in, it worked out pretty good. All right, well, I'm gonna water them and then get ready for it. So tomorrow is Easter. So you guys have a happy Easter, and I'll talk to you later.